a little sleepy? A little sleepy? That's okay. I'm going to read you a little nap time story. It's from Mary Poppins Opens the Door. And it's called The Cat That Looked at a King. It's kind of a long chapter, so we're not going to read the whole thing, but we're going to kind of skip around. Michael had toothache. He lay in bed, groaning and looking at Mary Poppins out of the corner of his eye. There she sat in the old armchair, busily winding wool. Jane knelt before her, holding the skein. Up from the garden came the cries of the twins as they played on the lawn with Ellen and Annabelle. It was quiet and peaceful in the nursery. The clock made a clucking, satisfied sound like a hen that has laid an egg. "Why should I have toothache and not Jane?" complained Michael. He pulled the scarf Mary Poppins had lent him more tightly round his cheek. "Because you ate too many sweets yesterday," Mary Poppins replied tartly. "But it was my birthday," he protested. "A birthday is no reason for turning yourself into a dustbin. I don't have toothache after mine." Michael glared at her. Sometimes he wished Mary Poppins was not quite so perfectly perfect, but he never dared to say so. "If I die," he warned her, "you'll be sorry. You'll wish you'd been a bit nicer." She sniffed contemptuously and went on winding. "Oh, come on, you were so nicely sleepy." Holding his cheek in his two hands, he gazed round the nursery. Everything there had the familiar look of an old friend. The wallpaper, the rocking horse, the worn red carpet. His eyes wandered to the mantelpiece. There lay the compass and the Doulton bowl, the jam jar full of daisies, the stick of his old kite, and Mary Poppins's tape measure. And there, too, was the present Aunt Flossie had given him yesterday, the little cat of white china patterned with blue and green flowers. It sat there with its paws together and its tail neatly curled about them. The sunlight shone on its china back. Its green eyes gazed gravely across the room. Michael gave it a friendly smile. He was fond of Aunt Flossie, and he liked the present she had brought him. Then his tooth gave another dreadful stab. "Ow!" he shrieked. "It's digging a hole right into my gum." He glanced pathetically at Mary Poppins. "And nobody cares." Mary Poppins tossed him a mocking smile. "Don't look at me like that," he complained. "Why not? A cat can look at a king, I suppose." "But I'm not a king," he grumbled crossly. "And you're not a cat, Mary Poppins." He hoped she would argue with him about it and take his mind off his tooth. "Do you mean any cat can look at the king? Could Michael's cat?" demanded Jane. Should I be trying a British accent for these voices? Mary Poppins glanced up. Her blue eyes gazed at the cat's green eyes, and the cat returned her look. "Oh, come on, come back." Mary Poppins glanced up. Her blue eyes gazed at the cat's green eyes, and the cat returned her look. There was a pause. "Any cat," said Mary Poppins at last, "but that cat more than most." Smiling to herself, she took up the ball of wool again. "Come on, come sit up with Puss. Sit here with Puss." Smiling to herself, she took up the ball of wool again, and something stirred on the mantelpiece. The china cat twitched its china whisker and lifted its head and yawned. The children could see its glistening teeth and long pink cat's tongue. The cat then arched its flowery back and stretched itself lazily, and after that, with a wave of its tail, it leapt from the mantelpiece. Plop went the forepaws on the carpet. "Purr," said the cat as it crossed the hearthrug. It paused for a moment by Mary Poppins and gave her a little nod. Then it sprang up upon the windowsill, dived out into the shining sunlight, and disappeared. Michael forgot his toothache and gaped. Jane dropped her skein and stared. "But," they both stammered, "how? Why? Where?" "To see the Queen," Mary Poppins answered. "She's at home every second Friday." "Don't stare like that, Jane. The wind might change." "Close your mouth, Michael. Your teeth might get cold." "But I want to know what happened," he cried. "He's made of china. He isn't real, and yet he jumped. I saw him." "Why did he want to see the Queen?" asked Jane. "Mice," replied Mary Poppins calmly, "and partly for old sake's sake." A faraway look came into her eyes, and the hands on the ball of wool fell idle. Jane flung a warning glance at Michael. He wriggled cautiously out of bed and crept across the room. Mary Poppins took no notice. She was gazing thoughtfully out of the window with distant, dreamy eyes. "Once upon a time," she began slowly, as though she were reading from the sheet of sunlight. Isn't that great? So basically, this king has become obsessed with facts, and he doesn't really pay any attention to his kingdom anymore. He neglects his queen. His beautiful palace of crystal has got mice and cobwebs because all of his servants, he commands them to help him research these various dusty old facts. At last there came a day when the king and the courtiers were busy as usual at their desks in the council chamber. The queen sat listening to the scratching of pens and the squeaking of mice in the wainscot, and presently as she sat so still, a bold mouse streaked across the floor and began to wash its whiskers right under her throne. The queen gave a little frightened gasp, but she quickly clapped her hand to her mouth for fear of disturbing the king. Then she pulled her ermine train about her and sat trembling within it. And at that moment, over the edge of her hand, her startled eyes glanced across the room and saw on the threshold a cat. A small cat it was, as fluffy as a dandelion and white as sugar from tail to whisker. It walked with a lazy, swinging step, as though it had nothing at all to do and all time to do it in. A pair of green eyes glowed in its head as it sauntered through the door. For a moment it paused at the carpet's edge, glancing curiously at the king and the courtiers as they bent above their books. Then the green eyes turned towards the queen. The cat gave a start and its body stiffened. Up went its back like the hump of a camel. Its whiskers stretched into threads of steel. Then it leapt across the council chamber and dived beneath the throne. There was a hoarse cat cry and a smothered squeak, and the mouse was there no longer. "Silence, please. Don't make such extraordinary noises, my dear. They interrupt my thoughts," said the king fractiously. "It wasn't me," said the queen timidly. "It was a cat." "Cats," said the king absentmindedly, without even lifting his head. "Cats are four-footed creatures covered with fur. They eat mice, fish, liver, and birds, and communicate either in a purr or a caterwaul. They keep themselves to themselves and are popularly supposed to possess 9 lives. For further information on cats, see page 2, volume 7, shelf D, in library number 5, to the left as you go in the door. Here, hi, what's all this?" With a start, the king looked up from his page, for the cat was sitting on the desk before him. "Kindly be careful," said the king crossly. "You're right on my latest facts. They deal with a very important question. Do turkeys really come from Turkey? And if not, why?" "Well, what do you want? Speak up. Don't mumble." "I want to have a look at you," said the cat calmly. "Oh, ho, you do you? Well, a cat may look at a king, they say, and I've no objection." "Go ahead." The king leaned backward in his chair and turned his face from left to right so that the cat could see both sides. The cat gazed thoughtfully at the king. There was a long pause. "Well," said the king with a tolerant smile, "and what do you think of me, may I ask?" Oh, you just going to town on Puss here. Oh, look at this beautiful illustration. "Not much," said the cat casually, licking its front paw. "What?" cried the king. "Not much indeed, my poor ignorant animal. You are evidently not aware which king you are looking at." "All kings are pretty much alike," said the cat. "Nothing of the kind," the king said angrily. "I defy you to name a single king that knows as much as I do. Why, professors come from the ends of the earth to consult with me for half an hour. My court is composed of the very best people. Jack the Giant Killer digs my garden. My flocks are tended by no less a person than Bo Peep, and all my pies contain 24 blackbirds. Not much to look at, forsooth. And who are you, I'd like to know, to speak to a king like that?" "Oh, just a cat," the cat replied. "4 legs and a tail and a couple of whiskers." "I can see that for myself," snapped the king. "It doesn't matter to me what you look like. What I care about is, how much do you know?" "Oh, everything," said the cat calmly as it licked the tip of its tail. "What?" the king burst out with an angry splutter. "Well, of all the vain, conceited creatures, I've a jolly good mind to chop off your head." "So you shall," said the cat, "but all in good time." "Everything? Why, you preposterous animal! There's no one alive, not even myself, who could be as wise as all that." "With the single exception of cats," said the cat. "All cats, I assure you, know everything." "Very well," growled the king, "but you've got to prove it. If you're so clever, I shall ask you 3 questions, and then we shall see what we'll see." He smiled a supercilious smile. If the wretched cat insisted on boasting, it would have to take the consequences. "Now," he said, leaning back in his chair and putting his fingers together, "my first question is—" "One moment, please," said the cat calmly. "I cannot undertake to answer your questions until we have settled the terms. No cat would do anything so foolish. I am prepared to make a bargain with you, and these are my conditions. It is agreed between us that you shall ask me 3 questions. After that, it is only fair that I should question you, and whichever of us wins the contest shall have command of your kingdom." The courtiers dropped their pens in surprise. The king's eyes goggled with astonishment, and he swallowed the words that sprang to his mouth and gave a disdainful laugh. "Oh, my goodness. Calm down. This is supposed to be story time, not pounce time. Yeah, you looked sleepy. You've eaten. You know, we played earlier. You ate. You worked out your kind of sugar rush, and then you were ready to nap with Puss. And so I thought you would nap with me, but whenever there is an opportunity for pouncing, you just cannot resist it." The courtiers dropped their pens in surprise. The king's eyes goggled with astonishment, but he swallowed the words that sprang to his mouth and gave a disdainful laugh. "Very well," he said haughtily. "It's a great waste of time, and you, not I, will be the one to regret it, but I accept your bargain." "Then take off your crown," commanded the cat, "and lay it on the table between us." The king tore the crown from his tattered head, and the jewels flashed in the sunlight. "Let's get this nonsense over and done with. I have to go on with my work," he said crossly. Are you ready? Well, here's my first question. If you laid them down carefully, end to end, how many 6-foot men would it take to go right round the equator? That's easy, the cat replied with a smile. You simply divide the length by 6. Aha, cried the king with a crafty look. That's all very well, but what is the length? Any length you like, the cat said airily. It doesn't really exist, you know. The equator is a purely imaginary line. The king's face darkened with disapproval. Well, he said sulkily, tell me this. Can you guys see her? Well, he said sulkily, tell me this. What is the difference between an elephant and a railway porter? No difference at all, said the cat at once. Because they both carry trunks. But, the king protested. These are not the answers I expected. You really must try to be more serious. I can't help what you expected, said the cat. These are the proper replies to your questions, as any cat will tell you. The king made an angry click with his tongue. This nonsense is getting beyond a joke. It's a farce. It's nothing but twiddle-twaddle. Well, here's my third question, if you can answer it. You could see by the smile on the king's face that this time he thought he had the cat exactly where he wanted him. He held up a pompous hand and began, if a dozen men working 8 hours a day had to dig a hole 10.5 miles deep, how long would it be, including Sundays, before they put down their spades? The king's eyes shone with a cunning sparkle. He had gazed at the cat with a look of triumph, but the cat had its answer ready. 2 seconds, it said quickly with a little flick of its tail. 2 seconds? Are you mad? The answer's in years. The king rubbed his hands together with a glee at the thought of the cat's mistake. I repeat, said the cat, it would take them 2 seconds. To dig such a hole would be utterly foolish. 10 miles deep, they would say. Why? What on earth for? That isn't the point, the king said angrily. But every question must have a point. A point is exactly what questions are for. I like that. That's a deep cut from P.L. Travers. And now, said the cat, it is my turn, I believe. The king gave an angry shrug of his shoulders. Well, be quick. You've wasted enough of my time. My questions are short and very simple, the cat assured him. A cat would solve them in the flick of a whisker. Let us hope the king will be equally clever. Now, here's my first. How high is the sky? The king gave a grunt of satisfaction. This was exactly the kind of question he liked, and he smiled a knowing smile. Well, of course, it all depends. If you measure it from a level plane, it would be one height, from the top of a mountain another, and after taking this into account, we should have to determine the latitude and longitude, amplitude, magnitude, multitude, not forgetting the atmospherics, mathematics, acrobatics, and hysterics, the general depressions, expressions, impressions, and confessions, together with... Excuse me, interrupted the cat, but that is not the answer. Try again, please. How high is the sky? The king's eyes popped with angry astonishment. No one had ever dared to interrupt him before. The sky, he bellows, it's... Well, of course, I can't tell you in so many yards. Neither could anyone, I assure you. It is probably... I want an exact reply, said the cat. He glanced from the king to the gaping courtiers. Has anyone here in this hall of learning the answer to my question? Nervously glancing at the king, the prime minister raised a trembling hand. I have always supposed, he murmured shyly, that the sky was just a little higher than the eagle flies. I'm an old man, of course, and I'm probably wrong. The cat clapped its sugar-white paws together. No, you are right, it protested gently. The king gave a sullen snort of rage. Tomfoolery, nonsensical bosh. The cat held up its paws for silence. Will you answer my second question, please? Where is the sweetest milk to be found? As simple as ABC, he said loftily. The answer, of course, is Sardinia, for there the cows live on honey and roses, and their milk is as sweet as golden syrup. Or perhaps I should say the elegant islands, where they feed upon nothing but sugar cane, or Greece, where they browse in the candy tuft. Now, taking into consideration... I can take nothing into consideration, said the cat, except the fact that you have not answered my question. Where is the sweetest milk, O king? I know, cried the little page, pausing for a moment above the half-filled inkwell. In a saucer by the fire. The cat gave the child an approving nod and yawned in the face of the king. I thought you were so clever, it said slyly. You may indeed be the wisest of kings, but somebody else has answered my question. Do not frown, however, for the king was glowering at the page. You still have one more chance to win. Here's my third question. What is the strongest thing in the world? The king's eyes glittered. This time he was certain he had the right answer. The tiger, he said thoughtfully, is a very strong thing. So are the horse and the lion. Then, of course, there are the tides of the sea and the granite veins of the mountains. Volcanoes, too, have a mighty strength. And the snowy caps of ice at the poles. Or again, it might be the wall of China. Or again, it might not, the cat broke in. It glanced once more around the council chamber, and this time it was the queen who spoke. I think it must be patience. For in the long run, it is patience that overcomes all things. Another deep cut from P.L. Travers. The green eyes dwelt gravely upon her for a moment. It is indeed, the cat agreed, and turning it laid a paw on the crown. O wisest of monarchs, cried the cat, you are without doubt a mighty scholar, and I am a common or garden cat, but I have answered all three of your questions, and you have not answered one of mine. The result of the contest is clear, I think. The crown belongs to me. The king gave a short, contemptuous laugh. Don't be so silly. What would you do with it? You can't make laws and rule the people. You don't even know how to read or write. Turn over my kingdom to a cat? I'm hanged if I will. The cat smiled broadly. I see that your wisdom does not include a knowledge of fairy tales. If it did, you would know that it is only necessary to cut off a cat's head to discover a prince in disguise. Fairy tales? Pooh, they're nothing to me. I'm thinking about my kingdom. Your kingdom, said the cat, if you'll forgive me mentioning it, is no longer your affair. All that need concern you now is quickly to cut off my head. The rest of you may leave to me. Furthermore, since you apparently have no use for them, I shall take into my service this wise man, your prime minister, this understanding woman, your wife, and this sensible child, your page. Let them get their hats and come with me, and together we four shall rule the kingdom. But what's going to happen to me? Cried the king. Where shall I go? How shall I live? The cat's eyes narrowed sternly. Should have thought of that before. Most people think twice before making a bargain with a cat. Well, out with your sword now, learned man, and I trust the blade is sharp. Stop, cried the prime minister as he laid his hand on the hilt of the king's sword. Then he turned to the cat and bowed respectfully. He said quietly, listen to me. It is true that you have won the crown in fair and equal contest, and it may be you are indeed a prince, but I must decline your offer. I have served the king faithfully since the days when I was a page in his father's court, and whether he be crowned or uncrowned, head of a kingdom or a tramp on the lonely roads, I love him and he needs me. I will not go with you. Nor I, said the queen, as she rose from her golden throne. I have stood at the king's side since he was young and comely. I have waited for him in silence through long, lonely years. Whether he be wise or foolish, rich or without bread, I love him and I need him. I will not go with you. Nor I, said the little page, as he corked up his bottle of ink. This is the only home I have ever known, and the king is my king, and I am sorry for him. Besides, I like filling up the inkwells. I will not go with you. And at that the cat smiled a curious smile, and its green eyes shone on the three who had refused him. What have you to say to this, O king? Said the cat as it turned to the desk. But no words came to answer the question, for the king was weeping. O wise man, why do you weep? Asked the cat. Because I am ashamed, sobbed the king. I boasted about how clever I was. I thought I knew everything, pretty nearly, and now I find that an old man and a woman and a little lad are all far wiser than I am. Do not try to comfort me, he wept, as the queen and the prime minister touched his hands. I am not worth it. I know nothing at all, not even who I am. He hid his face in the crook of his arm. Oh, I know that I am a king. I know my name and address, of course, but I do not know, after all these years, who I really truly am. Look at me, and you will find out, said the cat quietly. But I have looked at you, said the king, into his handkerchief. Not really, the cat insisted gently. You have only glanced at me now and again. A cat may look at a king, you say, but a king may also look at a cat. If you did that, you would know who you are. Look in my eyes and see. The king took his face out of the handkerchief and peered at the cat through his tears. His eyes wandered over the calm white face and came at last to the cat's green eyes. Within that shining, piercing gaze he saw his own reflection. Closer, closer, the cat commanded. Obediently the king bent nearer. And as he gazed at those fathomless eyes, a change came over the man within them. Slowly his thin, pinched face grew fatter. The pale cheeks plumped into round red patches, and the wrinkles smoothed themselves out of his brow. Bright locks of brown curled upon his head. A brown beard sprang from his graying chin. The king gave a start of surprise and smiled, and a big, broad, rosy man smiled back from the mirroring eyes of the cat. My glorious ghost, that's me, he cried. I know who I really am at last. Why, I'm not the cleverest man in the world. He flung up his head with a gusty laugh. Ho, ho, I see it all now. I'm not a thinking person at all. I'm nothing but a merry old soul. He waved his arms at the gaping courtiers. Here you, take away those pens and papers, tear up the notebooks, bury the desks, and if anyone mentions a fact to me, I shall cut his head off myself. He gave another uproarious laugh and embraced the prime minister so tightly that he nearly killed the old man. Forgive me, my faithful friend, he cried, and bring me my pipe and a bowl of punch, and call in my fiddlers 3. And you, my joy, my treasure, my dove, he turned to the queen with outstretched arms. Oh, give me your hand again, dear heart, and I'll never let it go. Happy tears crept down the cheeks of the queen, and the king touched them gently away. I don't need stars in the sky, he whispered. I have them here in your eyes. Forgive me if I interrupt, but what about me? Exclaimed the cat. Well, you've got the kingdom, you've got the crown. What more do you want? The king demanded. "Pooh," said the cat, "they're no use to me. Accept them, I pray, as a friendly gift. But as no cat ever gives something for nothing, I demand in return 2 small requests." "Oh, anything, anything at all," said the king with a lordly gesture. "I should like, every now and then," said the cat, "to come to the palace and see—" "Me? Why, of course, you're always welcome," the king broke in with a satisfied smile. "To see the queen," the cat continued, ignoring the king's remark. "Oh, the queen! All right, whenever you like. You can help us keep down the mice. My second request is the little chain of blue and green flowers that the queen wears round her neck." "Take it and welcome," said the king airily. "It was a cheap one, anyway." Slowly the queen put up her hands and unfastened the clasp at her throat. She twined the necklace about the cat, looping it round the furry body and over and under the tail. Then for a long moment she looked deep into the cat's green eyes, and the cat looked into hers. And in that look lay all the secrets that queens and cats carry in their hearts and never tell to anyone. "My at-home days are every second Friday," said the queen as she smiled at the cat. "I shall come," said the cat, nodding. And having said that, he turned away, and without a glance at anyone else, sailed out of the council chamber.